Well, thank you, everyone. It's fairly good turnout, and we're going to walk through a bunch of stuff. If we start to glaze over a little bit, we'll speed up. But I think we got some good news today. This is over the last really 2 months, we've been able to secure a bunch of funding for the project, and we're happy to be able to explain it to everybody. So quickly, really, as part of our extension, I'll call it, of the June 12th meeting that we had this year, where we didn't have a great notification period for everyone. We're just going to extend some of that meeting and give you all that are here tonight a little bit more of the history, just to kind of catch up. And then we'll sort of talk about the project scope and next steps, and certainly give you a taste of what we've been working on over the last year. So again, really the meeting goal is to explain to you that we were able to receive some funding. We identified, we have the project that we've been here a couple different times. We've got 2 other projects in the pipeline, which is really exciting. A lot of the hard work was done by Kelly and the board, as well as Nick Altanaga from North Country Council off to my left. And then the other project, we've got the safety section from our highway design staff in the back, and they're responsible for the highway safety improvement program. And we had a couple projects that we can explain. So just quick introductions. My name is Jason Aad. I'm the project manager. If you do need to contact anyone or you want to yell at anyone, please go to me first. They all work really hard. We've got a number of people in the back. We have Sarah Healy and Hans Weber from our highway staff. So they're the ones responsible for really getting into the technical, the ideas that we can generate to really solve some of the issues within the corridor. The safety section, as I explained, we've got Corey as the project manager, Lila Flynn, and Anil. Awesome. Anil, I've just met him. So we're pretty excited that they're here. If there's any questions about the other projects within the corridor, Corey's here. I'm not going to steal all his thunder. From environment side, we have Melly Doobie from New Hampshire DOT and Jen Reardon from GM2 as our consultant on the environmental, specifically the natural and cultural resources. And then Nick from North Country Council has been great. He's been a strong advocate for the town and within the tenure process. So all the information is already posted that you'll see tonight on the website. So you're welcome to do the QR code or just type in the website. But really, we're just going to give you a rundown as far as what we're looking for to move the new Albany Madison 29597 project forward and what we've got in plan. So a lot of text on this, and this is all on the website, so you're welcome to do that. The roadway itself has no improvement since the 1930s. You can feel that every pavement cycle because we have a concrete slab directly beneath the pavement, north of Pine Mill Road, all the way up through to the Conway town line. And really, again, no major improvement. So we've got narrow roadway, narrow shoulders. We've got almost 100-year-old drainage throughout the whole system. And it's obviously been past its design life, and with the volume of traffic that we see on it. In the 1990s, the Albany Madison 10437, that's what everybody sees this project as. It was originally started in the 10-year plan at a time when we had a lot of projects in the 10-year plan and really didn't have fiscally constraints. In 2008, the legislature changed that so that we had a fiscally constrained 10-year plan, and the 10437 project was kind of attached to the Conway bypass that was on its way out at the time. For about 4 years, the department looked at ways to do cost savings to really change the typical, explore different ways that we could still continue the 10437, but we did not have construction funding. So in that 2012 or 2009 plan, then that went away with no construction. Jack Rose, one of your former select board members, really advocated hard with the Department of Transportation as well as the governor to be able to bring this project forward. And so in 2015, we were able to add that. And there's a lot of text here, and I think it's really important. This was part of the original 10-year plan application. All projects that go into the 10-year plan need to have a purpose, they need to identify some needs, And Jack really spearheaded this to be able to bring it in. At the time, he was still looking to find some type of safety improvements throughout the entire corridor, from Tamworth all the way to Conway, which is about 6.5 miles. And I think the big thing for me that I got out of this is that his focus was on safety, and he was willing to sacrifice total improvement in order to get something that was safe and for the entire corridor. So I think that is pretty noble of Jack to advocate as long as he did to be able to get this project in. So the 10-year plan, and I always bring this in because it's really important for everyone to understand. When a project gets added to the 10-year plan, the construction goes to the end of that cycle. So when this was added in 2015, it went to 2024 as the year that you could be constructed. We're now in 2024, understand that. One of the problems in the older 10-year plans is that the engineering and the right-of-way work to do that work in this plan was also put towards later. So we started in 2021, but it takes about 5 to 8 years to do a project depending on the size of the project. So it seems like a really long time.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
I'm moving.
Is you not picking up? Do I need to hold this?
Well, when you were over.
Oh, I walk too much. I'm French.
Yeah, stop it. No, you're good.
Okay.
That's better. Don't
All right.
trip over that.
All right.
That's your line.
I'm sorry about that.
You can't go in front of it.
Okay. I got a box now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Again, so I just sort of wanted to, in 2020 is when we actually had engineering funds to start all of this work. It does take time to get there. In the newer 10-year plans, we're much better about making sure that we put the engineering in the years that we can get it to actually put projects out when we think that they should be constructed. So I bring that up only because it's really important to understand that it does take time. And the second piece is when this went into the 10-year plan, there was $7.7 million allocated for six miles or 6.5 miles of roadway. It's not a lot. It's almost 2 miles of roadway per roadway mile in order to construct something. So when we were starting to get into this, we were starting to recognize that the entire corridor was in excess of $30 million in order to actually do some significant improvements within the corridor. So it's a little bit of the history as far as planning and what we have done over the last 18 months. We've done most of our data collection, and the data collection is the first step in order to make sure that we have the information that we need. So that's the survey. We have ground surveyors that go out, collect all of the existing features as well as the existing right-of-way so that we know boundaries we're working within. We have Melly and Jen are out there delineating wetlands and identifying all the natural resources. They're also screening the wildlife and a number of the species that we need to be considerate of. We have our roadway design teams that are going through and identifying what the horizontal and vertical geometry and what you're doing with the speeds. We've got certainly the safety team is breaking down the crash data, understanding what the trends are. So it's not just there's a crash, not all crashes are created equal. Crashes, drivers behave differently in different scenarios. So understanding the dynamics of the crashes and what they are is going to lead to better solutions that we have in the fields. We did look at traffic volumes as well, although there's most of the volumes going through New Hampshire 16 are north and south. There's not as much significant traffic turning off, which you were all well aware of. And then I think the latter piece is becoming more of a challenge for us is the stream crossings and working with Department of Environmental Services to understand any of the culverts. So it's a generally a big cost. So we put all this stuff in a big pot and then Hans and the team, they go through and start estimating what that is to kind of give us an idea of what are we really looking at for different opportunities. So we did have a couple different steps along the way in order to start vetting that. The first one was in August of 22. And that was really the first time that we had been out and understanding that because of the length of time, there was a lot of frustration within the community. We did leave the survey cards, which were extremely helpful, and we'll sort of walk through that. And then I was hoping to be able to come here in June, and I apologize that we did have the snafu and delivering some of the notifications, so they know that many of the residents on 16 did not receive it, and so we're doing a little bit of a repeat. So for those probably not everybody remembers, we basically dropped in a survey card to kind of understand like use along the corridor, as well as, you know, what is your general thought? Because we don't live here and we don't necessarily understand all the issues of commuting back and forth or just turning into your own driveway. So it was really, really helpful. We had 83 respondents, which doesn't necessarily seem like a lot, but that's a great percentage for the town of Albany, considering most of the respondents took the card at the first meeting, and then we did send them through the tax bills, and that's not always the best way to get information, but it was certainly very helpful. So we got some trends as far as how people use New Hampshire 16. We understood what their issues are, and basically 60% of the people had the same concerns. Turning off and on New Hampshire 16, usually in driveways or the businesses. The traveling speeds north and south along 16 are way too high, and we're going to continue to hear that. I understand that. We don't have all the solutions here, but we certainly have ideas on how we're going to be able to tackle that in the preliminary design. And one of the things that was also connected with the Sheriff's Department and Chief King for Madison is the narrow shoulders. There was like a chicken and egg thing going on with enforcement. People want to see enforcement, but we don't necessarily have first responders that are feeling safe on our roadway. And so we could kind of see a lot of those connected. And then there was a lot of intersection type issues as well that we heard, and it was really, really helpful. Aggregated some of the responses, and I think that as we go forward, we're going to be looking for ways to improve safety on and off 16, reduce speed, as well as take care of all the infrastructure needs that we have. So this, I'm not going to read all this, and I think it was really, really helpful to help identify where we need to spend the money. So again, I'm going to go in another couple slides sort of talk about our segment analysis and how we looked at it, but we recognized the fact that we had 6.5 miles. We were not going to be able to pay for it with the $7.7 million, and where can we spend the money to best meet the needs of the community? And I think most of the responses were within that segment 2, which was really, really helpful. And that's from, you know, our segment 2 is essentially from Pine Knoll Road north through Tanglewood Cottages to about the truck lane. So again, your input was really beneficial in targeting that. We recognize also that there was a high percentage at 113 with the town of Madison and the Wildwood community at that location. We also recognize some specific spot needs within our segment 1 south of Pinewood. And I think we tried to make sure that we were aware of what the response was going to be needed and what we could do. And I think that was where, you know, working with Kelly and Nick Altanaga was really beneficial. So again, we wanted to come here in June and kind of showcase all of that. And I apologize for not having adequate notification for that. That's why we're again here today. We didn't stop, we kept working. And I think that's also the message I wanted to make sure that you were aware, is we just didn't wait for the next one and it took us 6 months to get back. You know, the whole team was working on moving it forward. At the time, in June, we still only had $9.1 million. So I'm going to let Jen tell more of her story, and then we'll get back to what we did with the analysis.
Yeah, so we've been working on assessing the environmental resources for compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act and Section 106. So the next few slides go over some of the resources in the project area. So as far as some of the natural resources, there's various wetlands and streams along the corridor. We expect there to be impacts from shoulder widening and culvert and bridge improvements, and those will be quantified ongoing with the design. There's no mapped flood zones in the project area. The area is currently not mapped by FEMA. There's several conservation lands next to segments of the project. That includes White Mountain National Forest and some Shakora Lake Conservancy lands. land that is part of the White Mountain National Forest is classified as an outstanding resource watershed. And we also expect the project's going to require stormwater treatment for the existing and proposed pavement. Albany and Madison are not MS4 communities, so MS4 compliance is not required. But the project is subject to New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services alteration of terrain permit. So stormwater treatment areas will be required to meet those permit requirements, and some potential treatment locations have been identified, and that, you know, sizing and type of stormwater treatment will be you know, further evaluated as the project progresses. We coordinated with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and New Hampshire Natural Heritage Bureau to identify potential threatened and endangered species that might be near the project. So some of the federally listed species that came up as they could occur within the project are Canada lynx, monarch butterfly, and small world begonia, which is a plant. Monarch butterfly here on the slide, we have as a candidate species. Just last week, it was listed as proposed threatened, so just one update. And for all those species, that will require consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. For state-listed species, there's 3 different plant species that have records near the project. We did field surveys this past summer and didn't find any of the plants within the project limits, so no further coordination is required there. These pictures I actually meant to show on this other slide here. The top picture is the Meadowbrook crossing Route 16, and then the bottom one is just a typical forested wetland in the project area. And these pictures I got from the internet. I didn't actually see a Canada lynx in the project area, but I thought it was a neat picture. I didn't take it. The picture on the bottom is what a small world begonia looks like. So cultural resources, Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act requires review of cultural resources, which include historic properties and structures, as well as archaeological sites. So to initiate that review, we submitted a request for project review to the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources, and they recommended archaeological and historic resource surveys. So those 2 surveys are ongoing. Right now we have a Phase 1A archaeological assessment and an architectural survey plan. So the Phase 1A archaeological study, they look at the whole project area and identify potentially sensitive areas that may contain archaeological resources. And then if those areas are going to be impacted, then further surveys are done. The architectural survey plan looks at all the properties in the project corridor that are 50 years or older to see if they're eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. So this slide provides some information on how to become a consulting party to the Section 106 Cultural Resource Review. Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act offers those individuals or organizations with a demonstrated interest in the potential impacts to historic resources to have an opportunity to become consulting parties under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. And those interested would need to do so in writing to the Federal Highway Administration. So please contact the project team after the meeting if you would like more information. And there are copies of a brochure over there with additional information, so feel free to take one of those. Thanks.
Great.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So I noticed it's being funded by Federal Highway, if mine is correct, and that the 106 is really when it looks at the National Historical Preservation Act, it's looking at buildings 50 years or older that are potentially eligible to be on the National Registry of Historic Places. What if it has a state historic designation? Does the 106 look at that?
Great question.
That is a great question.
Melody, do you have any knowledge on that?
So there is a state process for projects that do not involve federal funds. But because we do have federal funds for this project, I believe Section 106 is the overarching regulation that we are required to follow. The state process is, and I'm going to mess this reference up, but it's 227, RSA 227C, or I could look into it further to provide the actual regulation for you, but it is essentially the same, but that is what we follow when there are no federal funds involved or no other federal nexus, so no other federal permit or federal tie in any way. When there is federal involvement, whether it's Federal Highway or Army Corps of Engineers or FEMA, Section 106 becomes the guiding regulation for cultural resource review. So it is sort of all-encompassing and should be probably the same or more stringent than any state regulations. I can follow up on that.
So
more, but
your
that's
question
like-
specifically was on if it's state eligible but not national eligible. And because it's a resource that's older than 50 years old, then it would be part of our historic review. And if it's eligible at that point for the National Register or not, then that would be something that would be discussed. But I'm assuming our friends at Division of Historic Resources would be interested in it if it was a state resource. Is that a fair assumption?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly.
And I guess my point is if you have a building right down the road that's red and it's an old schoolhouse and it's, has a state designation, historic designation, but might not have a federal designation, do they get treated co-equally as far as,
As part of the review?
As far as the review.
Yeah, any resource over 50 years is going to be considered, and then the eligibility goes through Division of Historic Resources for that next step. So certainly I think that I don't want to get into all of the nuances of it because I'm going to butcher it if I do. But I know that it's a strong consideration.
Okay, well, I'll report back with something from the state with a good answer. But no, my whole point is simply this, is that certain buildings might be, eligible for state and federal, but maybe one or the other. So that's all I'm really, bringing out. So I'm a big preservationist at heart, growing up in Carroll County, and I really like to see our historic buildings, whether they're on the registry or not, preserved and protected, because they add to the quintessential quaintness of New England. As we expand and grow in the state, we don't want to jump over what makes New Hampshire unique. So that's my say for the day.
And I think for those that are really interested in historic resources, being a consulting party is a fantastic way to see the process from the inside, and it gives you access to the meetings that we have to attend and present our projects and the potential impacts that we have to those properties. It gives you access to those meetings, which not everybody has unless you go through Jamie to get approval. So if you're really interested in it, grab a pamphlet because Jamie's email address. You'll send an email to Jamie Sikora, and then 99.9% of the time we'll get an email right away that you've been added as a consulting party. So, and I don't at this point believe that we have any consulting parties. So now's a great time to get involved.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so the segment analysis, and this is what I wanted to come in June to really discuss, and why did we do it? We only had so much money. As we talked at the very beginning of the presentation, there was only $7.7 million that came out of the 2015 program. When we identified a number of projects in 2022, we did add 2.2, knowing that depending on what we would do, that we weren't going to cover it. This was an underfunded project to begin with. So we did add 2.7 in construction. So that's where the 9.1. So our segment analysis was all based on that 9.1. What can we do with that money in order to come up with a project that's buildable, that's permittable, and that's the most reasonable and prudent, because we knew coming into it that we wouldn't be able to construct or improve 6.5 miles. So we took a stab at identifying sections of roadway that were comparable. So section 1 for us, there is no concrete slab there today. Between Tamworth and Pine Knoll Road to the south, the existing slab was removed in the 80s. It was already, it's wider than the section to the north of that. So that was a really easy segmentation for us. Section 2, between Pine Knoll Road and really Conway Line, like how do you break that up? And we started just really sort of thinking about what construction limits could be. So we started breaking that up. It ended up being segmented into 3 subsegments for 2, and then 3. And 3 was really focused on the 113 intersection. We heard a lot of comment from the community about the intersection of 113 from both Madison and the Wildwood subdivision. And section 3 kind of helped address some of the roadway needs, but also focused on that intersection. And so the segment analysis sort of kind of identified, in order for engineers to think, we need matrices. So we sort of broke them down into what would be the highest value for each of the improvements. So safety was number 1, that's what we heard, speed and safety. We have our own needs within the concrete slab removal, drainage, any impacts outside the right-of-way have additional costs. We have environmental requirements that we need to meet. Jen just walked through alteration of terrain and the requirement that any additional pavement needs something to be able to treat that. We have wetlands within the corridor that we need to make sure that we satisfy Department of Environmental Services rules. And then, a culvert to drainage and concrete slab removal and pavement design and utility relocations, all of that kind of goes into the nuts and bolts of construction. And then the last one is, how do you build it? How much disruption when you build it would you have? And that's what we kind of put into our construction traffic control. So we use that criteria in order to kind of help us identify how we were going to bring this segment to the top that should be built. So we looked, segment 1, Tamworth Town Line to Pine Knoll Road. It's about 2.6 miles. Again, most of the roadway is between 32 and 34 feet wide, which means it's it's without a lot of improvements. There's a lot of different things that we can do to improve safety, specifically run off the road crashes or lane departure crashes. Some of the concerns that we heard from the 22 public informational, Drake Hill Road and Nickerson both had high or more severe crashes, a fatality being at Nickerson. That was in the reports, as well as some of the anecdotal evidence as we were hearing. We certainly heard the different intersections of concern throughout that section of roadway, the higher speeds and poor sight lines. The Lake Chicora, the Chicora River Watershed Association was here that night as well, and spoke about concerns with the Chicora River, which is in the southern part of that. And then I would, speed, I will just echo speed throughout. You're going to hear from everybody in the room. And then there were some requests for additional passing zones too. So I think for every response that we receive for speeding is too high, we're also going to see people, or we're going to hear people that are looking for opportunities to pass as well. So design considerations, again, 71 crashes within the 10-year period for that. Most of them, I believe, were at intersecting roadways and run off the road, which could have been lane departure, where they could cross the yellow line, or they could leave the roadway completely. A need for speed reduction and traffic calming. And then one of the things, we did look at a variety of different solutions for this: wider shoulders, additional turn lanes for all the intersections, roundabouts. I'm sure some of you heard during our reporting about roundabouts, just to, again, looking for ways to reduce speeds and increase safety at some of this. So the range of different alternatives that we looked at went from 1.8, where really modest improvements, including a left turn lane at Nickerson for 1.8 or about 1.5 million, all the way up to full reconstruction, wider shoulders to 8 million. So that was the range of that spectrum of design that we looked at the time. I'm going to break segment 2 into 2A and 2B. We saw 2A and 2B is basically Pine Mill Road through the Albany-Madison town line. It's about 2.6 miles. Narrow roadway, it's about 27, 28 feet. There's a concrete slab. Sees a high volume of traffic throughout the corridor, up to almost 19,000 vehicles per day for those peak October or peak foliage season. Again, we got a posted speed of 50 miles an hour. That could change potentially with some of the new legislation. Areas of concern, this is a higher density of driveways. We got a lot more driveways, a lot more people turning off and on 16 through the sector. We got businesses and residences, narrow shoulders. It was echoed with our first responders that it's not safe to pull over within this section. We got a series of curves through Iona Lake, and we actually looked at, we have, I don't want to overcomplicate it, but we have TomTom probe data that allows us to take a look at what vehicles are traveling, and you can see as traffic comes southbound going into these curves and coming north going into those curves on both sides, you can see the speed change in the diagrams that people are probably going greater than 50 miles an hour, and then they're coming into that section of the roadway and they're reacting to it. So it was pretty interesting when we were looking at the speed data. We looked at all of the different intersections again, we went through the spectrum of different types of intersection, modest, major intersection improvements, roundabouts even, and then basically we kind of settled on the most reasonable and prudent is sort of looking at opportunities to connect left turn lanes between that and provide additional space for residences with a two-way left turn lane. That's very similar to the northern section as you approach Conway, where you have that two-way left turn lane to go into some of the businesses. So that's kind of in the in that. So again, probably skip through some of that. Just these two sections in 2.6, we saw 59 crashes. And I'm going to skip to segment 2C, and we saw, which is basically from Bald Hill Road through Tanglewood to what we're calling it Cream Brook now because we're incorporating that stream crossing, but it's essentially the end of the truck climbing lane, where the 3-lane section is. If you're coming south from Conway, you got the two additional lane in order for larger vehicles to get up to speed. So section 2 is the end of that truck climbing lane. It's about 0.5 miles, and again, we did this because 2A plus 2C, we were kind of at the limit of what we had for available funds at the time, and 2C was another way to segment it to try to understand what was there. There's not as many resources or environmental resources, and there's less driveways, but there are the two businesses within that section. We also had a major stream crossing. And I see people starting to glaze a little bit. So the combination of 2A, 2B, 2C is 71 crashes within the period. So when we just start looking at crash and speed and the improvements, and we start looking at the more reasonable improvements for the different roadway sections, the entire segment 2C starts to rise to the top. And then the last segment 3, 1.5 miles from the southerly end of the truck climbing lane through Ledge Pond Road and really kind of focusing on what could we do for 113 in that intersection. And we heard, again, similar volumes. We've got 3-lane sections already between Conway and 113 with a left turn lane to go south on 113. A lot of businesses and residences and a lot of high speeds. And then we did have the fatalities in 22 that are part of this study period. So again, a large number of crashes within this entire section. We do have a lot of right-of-way impacts. We have some really challenging grades at 113 in order to do any improvements at 113. So we looked at a variety of different solutions, modest improvements that Nick and his staff were able to sort of, add into the 10-year plan, and I'll get into that in a second, but also, much bigger improvements of, thinking longer term or having greater success with some of the turning movements on 113 and other opportunities. So we did look at that the range of alternatives, again, it's at 1.5. The range of alternatives that we looked at, sorry for repeating myself, is about 12 to 20 million for that project. But that includes all of the roadway needs, the safety needs at 113, a new intersection, and possibly even, depending on what you do at 113, you start to get into the bridge that's on 113 right in front of Coleman's property, or potential other solutions in coming with another connection. So we looked at all of those to be able to come up, and we put it into a way for us to be able to process it. We did look at a couple different factors. We did, cost per road length, cost per crash, to kind of identify what would come. But you can kind of see, the most efficient or most prudent was segment 1, and the alternative that we looked at there is really modest improvement widenings, the left turn lane for Nickerson, rumble strips, real modest improvement for 1.4 million. In segment 2, we had all 3 segments that we looked at, and we're basically identifying a cost for segment 2 about 20.5 million, and then segment 3 was, we chose the lowest cost. And these were pretty comparable, but when you start looking at the crashes that we could improve, the potential that we have within the corridor for making other adjustments, and then you also look at the need that we have for the department, it started to become the most reasonable segment was segment 2. These were the costs, we broke it down, and again, we weren't that far off initially. We were between 30 and 40 for the entire project. And so we really have a funding issue when we got to this point. So that was where we've been doing over the last couple of months and trying to find additional monies. Within segment 2, Corey and the safety team does have a rumble strip project that could essentially address some of the lane departure crashes within that segment 1 south of Nickerson. The crash data that we had allows us to qualify for highway safety improvement funds. So we could be successful in spinning Nickerson as a standalone project under the safety program. Again, we had 9.1 million that we had for the 29597. We identified $7 million within our Tier 2 program, which is basically to address the reconstruction of roadways. It fits really nicely into reconstruction of the 16 north of the Madison town line. And then we also had within our culvert program, there was $1.4 million programmed to do Madison culvert. So that was almost just under 17 million. And then throughout the whole process, we were kind of poking Nick, and Nick was great. He enlisted their engineer to sort of look at what they could do for more modest improvements that would fit within the 10-year plan for New Hampshire 16 and New Hampshire 113. I don't want to steal your thunder. I'll give you the chance to do that. But I think between the work that the town of Albany has done and the North Country Council, they've been able to push that project into the 10-year plan, or at least into the top-rated project out of North Country Council. It fits within the available funds or the allocation that North Country Council, so it's likely to be a strong project. I think the only thing that we would suggest to you that during the hearings next year about the 10-year plan process that will be in the North Country is to advocate for that project just to sort of secure it. But all signs point to that being a project that would be seen within the 27 to 2036 plan.
Can I ask a question? So
Absolutely.
North Country Council, how much money do they anticipate to be allotted, and how much will this project take up that amount? And will there be an opportunity to fund a second project?
So this project, the 29597, is not asking for any additional money for the allocation. So the 20.5 million that we were able to secure, and I'll get into it in a second, for the 295 does not take any of the new allocation. It takes the old allocation plus the money that we were able to find in the different roadway programs to be able to complete that project.
So
The new project would be the next 10-year plan.
Yeah, the 113 and the 16.
Yeah, so, and does this pick up?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. So we have about a $7 million allocation for the region. So we had a couple different designs prepared over the past year. Albany had come basically a year ago, and we had some general improvements done just to the roadway geometry and things like that of the intersection. But when they applied for the 10-year plan, you know, one of the things, and really this came up with our conversations with our contracted engineer, when they had done those plans a year ago, was that, you know, the intersection improvements, the minor roadway changes and grading and all those things would have an impact, but very minimal. And so we had them go and actually look at a roundabout option at the intersection with Wildwood and 113. And I know DOT's original estimates, it was pretty high, so they kind of didn't look that direction, but it looks like it's going to fit within the allocation. I think it was about 5.5 or 6 million, so it leaves some extra. The other projects that came in, the other top 3, would definitely outstrip it, so we might be just submitting Albany. But when it went in front of the TAC, or Transportation Committee, almost every one of the TAC members, when I mentioned, oh, here's the highest rated project, they all were nodding their heads going, yep, that is a concern, the speed through there, you know, all the concerns noted at the public informational meetings was, you know, they all knew it, they had traveled through the intersection, so, you know, we think it's really worthwhile, and, you know, we're kind of waiting on DOT, they're doing their internal estimates right now, and we'll hear back in February, before we then do our final submittal, to then get into the process, but, we're really happy with it. You know, I think, like I said, everyone kind of knew the problem, and, you know, it's just been a long time coming to get this, you know, I think some people, I think Kelly, the selectman, was a little upset it was carved out of the wider project that we're here tonight for. But now that it's kind of on the road to, you know, get funded and be a part of that, it's good.
So that's the number 1 project out of Coas County.
Out of our whole region.
In the region that you cover. Okay.
Out of 19 projects that were submitted.
Okay,
So.
good.
Great. So last road, we do just kind of want, so what we're here tonight is, sorry, I didn't see you, Mr. Hatch.
Yeah, and evidently the fatalities don't count in improving this road. There's been more people killed on this road from the Tamworth line to Conway than you want to know about, just because it's not in the records, you know.
No, that was an important consideration.
It's awful funny. The Nickerson Road keeps coming out because that's a fresh fatality right there. There was one down below it a few years ago. If you get into Tamworth, on that bad turn down there, there's been at least a dozen killed on that corner. And the state of New Hampshire took all the signs off of it. When you back down, you look.
Crashes and fatalities, or the more severe injuries, were an important consideration in why this section from Pine Knoll Road through Creambrook or Tanglewood Cottages is the reason why we think we should be doing something. So I do want to recognize that, you know, we looked at all crashes, and we did differentiate between property, severe injuries, and fatalities, and the fact that we did have more fatalities in this section of roadway is a real important consideration in why we want to address this section, and why we were able to get the additional funds. So, and it all goes into this, Mr. Hatch, as far as, you know, the need. We have over 100 crashes within that 10-year period, with 32% of them being severe injuries and 3 fatalities. And again, this does, you know, there's more fatalities before the 10-year period, and that's our means, but it's really important. We do have additional objectives, so it's important, purpose and need is important to make sure that we qualify for the federal dollars. So it's a real clear-cut case here, but in addition to that, we have heard, and there's some opportunities that we can look into lowering speed, as well as addressing some of the other intersection safety concerns within the project. The project limits that we're proposing for the Albany-Madison 29597, again, we've said them a couple different times, from Pine Mill Road all the way through Cream Brook. That's going to address a lot of the turning off and on that we have. It addresses our needs within for culverts and drainage and pavement section. We also would be, in addition to reconstruction of the roadway, we are looking for additional width for the shoulders. And then we'll look for opportunities over the next 6 months to identify, are we looking at a single constant two-way left turn lane, or we were going to have dedicated left turn lanes throughout the corridor. There isn't a volume to dictate larger signals or that level of traffic infrastructure, but certainly, any improvement by widening the roadway to remove vehicles from the through traffic and get into a left turn lane is going to increase safety as well. Again, we talked about, I just talked about this as far as what the limits of work were and what we were looking to modify. And then for the 29597, this is what we're looking at for total project budget now. We got 20.5 that was approved. We added 11.7 this month. We're going to rename it to Albany Madison, which North Country Council will see. There'll be a slight change that we need approval. We're going to create a new Albany 45056, which will be the intersection improvements at Nickerson Road and New Hampshire 16. That will be funded through the HSIP. We still have a little bit of homework to do with Corey's group and Highway Safety Improvement Committee. But we have, as far as the work that was done to set that up, it's in great spot. And then again, we did quickly talk, a separate project for the 16 and 113 is in the stream for the 10-year plan. All right, so that's a new budget. This is the schedule. We're at the end of 24. We've been kind of focused on really where we're going to spend the money, as we've been talking about tonight, really determining the scope of work, which is really important for the next step, and being able to focus. I can't explain how beneficial it is for the department to be able to have a focused section of roadway, to be able to dedicate the resources to that. It was really challenging to start looking at 6.5 miles in the entire road, the number of bridges and culverts and driveways, to be able to sort of target this to that 3.2. It's still a big project, but it really helps that and be able to get some real momentum. We talked about historic resources section 106. That's pretty extensive. That's already started. That was what Jen and Melly have talked about tonight. It's something where we've collected the data over the next 4 or 5 months. We'll be able to get that information. The NEPA process, which is basically getting our, all of our ducks in a row to get the federal funds, that's been ongoing. We do expect that to continue through this year with a public hearing. So the next step for us is to go through, identify what the impacts are, both temporary and permanent. Whether the permanent is a roadway shift in order to accommodate the shoulders and the left turn lane, or it's a drainage need for water quality, or it's just temporary construction needs in order to build the whole road. That's our next step. And then we will be preparing for a public hearing, and I'm hoping that we can schedule that by the end of the year to be able to move that step. In order for us to move past where we are today, to begin to acquire rights, we need a public hearing, which is a formal process that we will request to the Governor Council. They will sign a commission, and it'll be a much more formal presentation for that, but it basically establishes what we would need for the roadway, and is it necessary to purchase right away. So that is something that we'd like to conclude this year, and then starting really through the end of next year, 25 into 26, that's when we're going to start, or when we'll be actively working on our final design and the utility coordination and putting the contract plans together to be able to construct it. Yes, sir.
Is right-of-way, public hearing, and acquisitions the takings?
Yes, yes. Acquisitions, it could be a temporary construction easement, for the time and period for the construction, plus whatever we need to. It could be a permanent if we, generally at low areas where everything gets discharged to, we do need to find a place to be able to treat the stormwater before. So that would be a permanent easement that's needed. If we do find opportunities to improve the roadway or widen and we need to look at actually acquiring right-of-way, that would be part of the same. So at this point, I don't have any impacts, and it's a pretty big effort, but certainly having a specific limit to focus on is going to help us in identifying how we build it, what we need to do, what opportunities we have to improve safety.
So some
I'm
people are
not
going
going
to
to be
lose
able to
property.
hear, I'm not going to be able to hear anybody unless they either use the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or you
That-
repeat the question.
I can do that, I think. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So let's do a few rules of order just so we can pick it up on the microphone. If you wouldn't mind,
Please.
please, would you be able to come to the microphone and just state your name and address real quick so that we can be able to record it? That would be great. So the first question was, sorry, sir, your
Sean
name is?
Wadsworth.
Sean?
Wadsworth.
Wadsworth?
Wadsworth.
Wadsworth, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Having a difficult time. Okay, the first question is, as far as the public, if I paraphrase it well enough, the public hearing is the start of the process in order to be able to identify your property, the impacts that we may have to it. What the process entails is actually three steps. One, we got to go to the public hearing. We got to identify, we need to prove to everyone that we need to do that, and that the commission would approve us to be able to acquire rights to support the roadway. The next step is we create right-of-way plans, and we identify what the existing right-of-way plan is, we identify what your property is and what that is, what you currently have. And then we have a team that goes out and values what the property is and what before and after and what those impacts are. And then we have another team that would go out and actually acquire it. It's a negotiation. We prefer not to condemn. We prefer to go through the whole process. There's the valuation, there's the appraisal, there's the offer. If you don't like that offer, you can get your own offer and we can go back. And we go through this much more in detail at the public hearing, but it's great. It doesn't mean that you're going to lose the whole property, but I don't have that answer yet. And I think over the next 4 months, there's some really tight areas within the corridor because of properties and different resources, whether it's environmental, and you've got Swift Brook or Green Brook or some of the Chicora River. We have some natural resources, and certainly we have historic resources that we need to take a look at. So there'll be, we'll have to go through and value. If the first option is to take the property, what are the other options that are more reasonable, more prudent in order to do that, while addressing all of the needs that we're looking to do. Did I answer some of your questions? Okay.
Thank you.
What did I get, 3 minutes?
Well, we have time.
No, I'm sorry. First of all, thank you for being here. I appreciate it and all the information. I think you kind of answered that there about taking the property, for lack of a better word. What happens when you start the project and it's in front of my business has to close down due to the project? Is there any recourse for me to recoup the business I lose?
Well, we hope we don't get into that situation where you lose the business. I think that throughout the final design, and Kelly Rota has reached out because we know that this is a concern. We have construction requirements that we put together for every project. So we have time of year restrictions, and it can be specific within the roadway construction for the actual work. We might need to do it for wildlife species or tree clearing. So there's a variety of different reasons why we would have time of year restrictions, and we certainly can work with the community to understand when we need to do that. So we expect this to be more than 2 years, probably 2.5 years to do the whole entire construction. So we're going to need to work around the different seasons that I don't know whether it's
We have a
the
few.
summer season or a fall season, we're gonna have to figure ways out. This is not the only project that I have where we're thinking about strategies in order to minimize traffic disruption during foliage season or you know, depending on the businesses, so.
Okay, the other thing is like you said, like, you know, 1, 2, 2C, 2A. Is 1 gonna be first, and then, you know, the way you gave it to us in numerics, is that the way the projects are gonna be done?
Great question. I didn't explain that, and I apologize, I skipped over that. So, this project, the Albany Madison, will be section 2. And that right now is programmed for beginning construction in, I would say, it's really 2028 is the beginning of when it possibly could be. The next project that we have lined up is the Nickerson intersection improvements. That is floating a little bit within the plan. That's the best way to say it. Tentatively, we put it in for 2030. It's going to be important to get this section 2 done first. And if for any reason, and if there's an opportunity to bring that one up first, we can. But right now, the plan is to focus on this section between Pine Knoll and Tanglewood, and then we'll build that, and then the other one will follow.
And you had mentioned to me before that you were going to be having a meeting with Madison itself, and did you have that date?
We talked to January 7th, I believe.
January 7th?
Yeah.
Okay. One last question. On the rotary down by Route 16 and 113, or the thought of a rotary, was there any input or survey on the amount of backup traffic that a rotary causes?
So that project right now is a planning project.
Okay.
It's an idea.
Okay.
So the next step, once it enters a 10-year plan, is that's when engineering becomes available. So those questions would be answered at that point. Then you'd have an engineer to be able to do. I'm sure they did a little bit of traffic to understand, but you're going to see more of that at that next step. They've done enough to be dangerous, but just enough to
The big
program.
thing is that over the life cycle of the project, as it goes through and gets to engineering, is that it might change the scope, and so to fit better, because I know this project we're here tonight for has changed almost completely from what it first went in as 20 years ago, or, you know, the whole life cycle, it's completely different, so.
Okay, you do have one more. When we talked about the endangered species and the plants and that, what about the other species that are not endangered? The beavers that live there out in Swift Brook and everything? Or when,
The ducks and geese?
yeah, or the fish that get put in Iona Lake at the beginning of the season for the fishing and everything? Was all that taken into consideration?
Yeah, so as part of the NEPA process, you know, we look at the listed species, the ones that are threatened or endangered. We also look at kind of general wildlife. Wildlife passage and crossings is something that gets considered now.
Okay.
You know, whether if the culverts or bridges are rehabilitated or replaced, whether wildlife crossings can be accommodated within that. So that, I feel like that's probably where maybe some of that wildlife analysis would come in.
I'll be signing up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have, yes, please.
It would be great if they could pick it up on camera.
At school. You asked me if I had received a letter, and I said no. So I just would like to know who received a letter tonight.
That's a great question. So we sent out a variety of different notices. There was a postcard that went out. There were letters that went to the town buildings. I'm curious who received postcards. Okay, pretty much everywhere. Did anybody receive actual written letters notifying them? Okay, everybody was notified this time. That's a positive. But in the future, so as we go through our public outreach, we do a variety of different messaging. So as we get, when we're at this higher level and we're sort of thinking about it, it usually goes out to the entire community. When we start to focus in at the individual impacts on the properties, you will be receiving letters. For the right-of-way public hearing, you'll receive certified public letters if you potentially impacted. So it starts to get a little bit more specific as we go through the process. Like, we were trying to make decisions about where we were spending money over the last 6 to 8 months, and so that's why, you know, using the postcards as a notification works really well, because we can pull in, you know, a bigger cross section of people, and we're focusing on Madison and Albany. So in the next one, I would you should expect a letter to notify you this as we move forward.
Hello, I'm Jennifer McConville-Lobos, and I live at 36 Wildwood Road. Would the Section 3 start after 2030?
Yes.
And if there's a roundabout, when we come out of Wildwood, it's a hill, and when it's icy, we just slip right into 16, and it's really dangerous right now. Would the roundabout that you're considering be right at the hill, or would it be, do you know how that would be? Like how far away from the hill it would be?
Do you want to speak to what?
Yeah, so I believe from working with the engineer that they took that into account, because they know that there's the steep grade on it. And I think that they've designed the roundabout a little shifted so that there is extra space on if you ingress and egress to Wildwood.
Okay.
So they have thought about that.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Thank you. Great. Any other questions? Comments?
I had a question. Based on the right-of-way commission, could you explain to how many are on that commission and what type of person that should serve on that commission?
That's a great question. It sets you up really well. So the right-of-way commission, they volunteer to be selected. And I believe that there's an application process to be able to do, because we don't have that many commissioners. So a commissioner is someone that is appointed by our counselor and nominated by a counselor and appointed by the governor to serve. And essentially, they sort of oversee. They're our board, and the right-of-way public hearing is their meeting as commission members. And so their intent in sort of making sure the department has done their due diligence and understanding what the impacts are and what those and what types of impacts they are, and you know, is there a reason? Do we meet a purpose and need? And that commission oversees the whole thing. So generally, there's a chair, and we have generally 3. In this case, it would be 3 commission members. It's not a special committee. It's just we have a typical right-of-way here. So it's actually, it's a pretty unique process to the state of New Hampshire, and I would certainly encourage Councilor Kennedy to having other opportunities to select you, because I know right now we have very few commissioners out there, and we see a lot of people coming across the state to do that. So I don't know if I answered all your question.
You did a great job,
okay.
Jason. Thank you.
And no engineering experience required, I know that. Melanie.
Jason, I just wanted to follow up on the question about state-protected historic resources versus national registered resources. So I was able to actually get in touch with our cultural resource program manager at DOT, and she did confirm that under the Section 106 process, the state listed not species, the properties eligible for the state register are protected the same as the properties listed on the national register. So they are equal under 106 per our process. Just want to follow up with that.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Bill Lake in Albany. So I feel like I'm at a checkers match here or something, because I was here a year ago, I believe, when you had us put up little pins where things were going to go. Didn't get notified about any June meeting, and I get here and, you know, all of a sudden now, you know, some of our suggestions that we had at the first meeting seem to be, you know, into a different project altogether, you know, which, you know, we brought to your attention, like the Wildwood section Now it's becoming 113. You know, this money's been bounced around for 30 years. I've been here all my life, you know. And, I mean, when we were at that meeting, we had 13 million, now we're down to 7. I just, you know, they've done engineering after engineering after engineering up through here. They did it two years ago again, extensively. You know, how many pretty pictures can we draw here before we get on the ball? There's a lot of people, how much is one life worth out there, okay? Now you're gonna take the project down here, you're gonna put it on the back burner, well then take the passing lane out, okay? Because it's the most ridiculous spot you could ever have a passing lane with a T intersection, with that amount of traffic that's coming in and out of that trailer park. You can't see, you turn, and somebody's in your lane that you're turning to go to Conway in, doing 80 miles an hour. And it happens every day. Somebody's gonna get killed. Seriously. It's inevitable, it's gonna happen. Take the passing lane out. It shouldn't be there to start with. I own all that frontage in front of that whole thing. And I have a light industrial park, and if I had it off the ground and I'd have trucks coming in and out of there, they'd be doing 20 miles an hour coming in and out of there because it's a little bit of a hill right there. So, you know, it's just, we've gone from this to putting a runabout. There's been no mention of, you know, why didn't they even consider taking and putting a brand new road out through the National Forest out through there, 500 foot back off this road. It'd be half the savings cost to do that by far, and no traffic jam. And spur off of that back into Route 16 and call it 16B or C or D, whatever you want. You know, and just cut this would have been, the people would still have their, you know, their area to go. You say that there's concrete that was taken out. In 1973, they put that road in. There's concrete still there. It hasn't been touched. It wasn't touched in '88. Still there. There's concrete in both sections. It heaves up every year. Wait, about January 15th, take a ride down through there.
No, I appreciate it. So just a couple clarifications. The passing lane that are you specifically referring to the passing zone that's north of the Tamworth town line, not the truck climbing lane that is closer to
No, I'm talking about right down here by what you call Nickerson Lane.
So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that we all, because I think as far as operations, pavement cycles and stuff like that, it's something that could be looked at. We can take back to Bureau of Traffic, and Corey's here. He's going to talk a little bit about. So just for clarity, we only had 7.7 million when it went into the 10-year plan. 2 years ago when we came, we understood that we had money. There was about $50 million within the program that we divided up amongst different projects. Albany was successful in receiving 2.2 of those. Still understanding that we didn't have enough money to do everything. We advocated, you know, this group here that came got another 11.7 million to make sure that we could complete something of significance. We can't build the entire corridor. We went through this analysis to understand where we best could spend the money. And I think they did a pretty good job of understanding some of the issues, but it's not final design. We can't construct anything from it. But it puts us on an excellent path to be able to put construction out there. We were able to be successful in finding other pots of money to address some of those issues. Again, we've got some systematic issues which Corey and his staff are certainly aware of, but we're doing the best that we can with the limited funds that we have. And I think that we've got a couple successful projects. You know, having the town understanding all of these issues and being able to put additional funds or request additional funds through the next 10-year plan cycle. I just want to understand that there wasn't enough money to do everything. We found that the highest need, the most prudent location was this location near Iona Lake. We got a couple other locations that we're going to continue to work on that are set up very, very well for the town. But we're not going to be able to do everything at this point. And we're gonna, obviously everybody here wants to save a life, so we're not purposely doing something. We're really we're struggling with the limited resources we have to be able to do something of.
Well, I understand your perspective on this, but there's things, there's a lot of things that we were told differently. When this project was brought forward to us, they had already done their survey and their improvements, and it was going to be the whole corridor, right up through, as far as fixing it up. There's areas down here, a month ago, 2 months ago, let's say. There's area down here in the marsh where the road actually, physically, drops 10 feet into the marsh, and doesn't even have a proper shoulder. Cars go off there, they're at lays. It's dangerous. You don't see it because you're driving it fine. Pull off, walk it, you see it. It's quite a eye opener how old the road is. So.
Completely understand.
And it's not going to get any better.
I appreciate these concerns.
And it's not going to get any cheaper because
you're 100% right.
15 years from now, I won't be here, let's say, but we'll still be talking about putting it on a map and spending more money to put it on a map. Somewhere along the line, we're going to bite the bullet, get some, we were talking about the government, they had some money that they were loosening up this past couple of years.
No, I appreciate it. I understand the frustration and the time that it takes transportation projects to be delivered. We certainly have a lot more momentum now at this stage in the project's life than it did 2 years ago or even 10 years ago. So I can't other than thank you for the fact that you do have the patience to be able to bear with folks from Concord coming up and telling you what we can and can't do. But I certainly appreciate the fact that I know that there's frustration. We're trying to work through it. And I think between the series of projects that we have, we're looking to make some positive benefit here.
Hi, Sean Wadsworth. Had the question that has come up in the past meetings and it was referenced in pretty much every slide, which was lowering the speed limit. And we had requested at past meetings that in future meetings, Department of Safety represent.
You did?
Are they here?
No, that's my bad.
In future meetings, could we have Department of Safety?
I will work on that. I cannot make any promises. We're two different departments. I know that is something that enforcement is something that the community, both communities are really looking for. So I will work on that a little bit harder. I'm sorry.
And it's every slide, your very first one's going back to Mr. Rose, and every slide says reducing speed, reducing speed, reducing speed. And I'm all for the engineering as improving safety, but the costs in the millions versus reducing speed and saving lives for thousands. I completely don't understand how this isn't the first thing we're doing.
And I don't think I'll ever win on this argument about changing speed limits. So one of the things that we can probably talk about is on January 1st, the designation for the posted speed could be lowered from 50 to 45. So that is something that I know that Representative or Senator-elect McConkey is keenly aware of and is certainly advocating with the Bureau of Traffic. So I would be hopeful that's sort of an operational and a corridor thing that I don't have purview over, but I would think that we'll be able to see significant changes, and it will influence all of this because and it's really beneficial. I know that Kelly is really excited about it, and that option doesn't become active until January 1st, so we're really close. And I'll work on Department of Safety. I apologize.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I just look at all the stuff was talking before. At this meeting on March 12, 2024, at a meeting, I noted that 1 minute 29, that Mr. Keller will be dying. The little sentence there was interesting. It says, it's paying off to have sheriff at Coleman, 113 and 16. My sons are seeing it also. There's a difference there because, you know, they had the sheriff there, so people slow down. So I was talking at a meeting. What was the date of the meeting? I have to look at it. But I was explaining at that meeting that it's a lot of money. Yes, it's a lot of money. But we don't have a state trooper. And a sheriff. He's doing a good job, but he cannot handle all the traffic we have. So he's saying it right there, his own words. But it's interesting, but it works. A state trooper is a wasp. You know when you have a wasp?
Yeah,
He's
I
doing
know
a
that there
good
were
work.
saturation patrols throughout the state, and I thought 16 was targeted this summer, but I don't have that information.
Yeah.
Corey, I don't know, were you aware of some of the saturation patrols?
Yeah, we've done some. I'm not up to speed on what 16 resulted in, but we can find out.
Yeah. I think that's something we can look at between the speed data we have and the connections that we have with Department of Safety.
I'm not sure if I was talking, this was June 12, 2024. I received a paper, Wednesday, June 12, 24, doors open at 5:30.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
the meeting that we tried to have on 6 months ago.
Because I'm trying to, you know, put all that together. So I noticed that you had a little meeting in the back with the selectmen, and after that, there we came in. But I cannot find anything recorded. Is that me making a mistake? Is it there?
No, we
right.
did not have a recording. I'm happy the town was able to record this one, but there was no actual video or streaming that was done for that.
Okay, let's do that. And one thing would be interesting is to have a sign. You have the sign, the town hall sign there. If you notice, there's nothing for tonight. So people that pass by, like North Conway, I'm sure will be affected by that. So it will be good to let them know what's going on here.
That's a great
And
suggestion.
I don't know the newspaper. I forgot to check the newspaper. If they were telling people what was discussed here, that would be also interesting. Just let people know, you know? Okay, and so I don't want to...
No, that's great. I
Yeah.
appreciate the suggestions. We do send public notices to the Associated Press, hoping that they pick them up. But I know that we have not, over the last probably 5 to 10 years, really purchased print ads because they're not as successful. In Facebook, working through the community, the postcards have been generally pretty good. Everybody got one here. I think the suggestion outside is a really good one. Mr. Hatch.
I'm going to take you back to what we had on the other meeting, okay? Why the hell can't we get a few speed limit signs out here? A few caution lights, okay? This horrible road, and everybody that's in this room probably is more worried about the road, the safety of the road. I know that's going to help. I know where you lost your money, your millions of dollars. It went over to East Conway at the dump road. They're putting the roundabout in. Ooh, okay, but I'm just throwing that out there again. You said the last time we should have to get hold of the Department of Safety. Well, do I have to get hold of it, or should the selectmen get hold? What? No caution light out here. Right here at Town Hall, you won't be able to get out of here tonight. Pretty simple.
I can bring that back to Bureau of Traffic and ask for interim measures, but the Department of Safety would be the enforcement side. Bureau of Traffic would be handling the signs, flashing beacons, traffic signals, and that type of thing.
I think there's 50-mile-an-hour speed limit signs from the time you leave Conway down there to 113 till you get down to the bad corner down here, and then it drops back. But, you know, I think everybody in this room is pretty concerned about the safety out here. I know I live right on this road. I've lived there for over 40 years. I'm going to tell you, it's an adventure every time you go out on this road.
Amen.
Huh?
Amen.
I pull out of my driveway, I'm gonna get caught for speeding. By the time as I get up to Bald Hill and I'm doing 60 miles an hour and somebody's that close to my bumper, okay? And I drive it a lot. I'm retired, I can burn all the gas I want. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Yes, sir. Would you be able to come up to the microphone so they can pick you up on camera?
Yeah, my name's Mark. I'm just curious, is it cheaper to just make a whole new road versus trying to improve an old road like this and do all this work that you're trying to do?
It's a great question. I don't know if there's going to be much of a difference between building a new road to the requirements that we need and rebuilding an existing road.
But you're
it's certainly
not impacting much of anybody that way. Especially if you run it through the state forest or along the state forest.
Still a significant impact though, and I don't know if that would be permittable.
And I know behind where I am, if you go all across there, if you start over at Bobcat Welding, just right where Pine Knoll is, and if you would just go straight up and over into the state forest and right back around, you bypass all of us. And they wouldn't impact anybody, and it would actually make a new town road for us.
It's a great suggestion.
I'm just
I know that
putting it out there that maybe that's cheaper, and there's no lakes or rivers or anything back there.
I think one of the things that we would struggle would be a maintenance of that new road. Now we have 2 roads to maintain and take care of. We'd still have the existing 16 with some of the substandard or older infrastructure that we have. So now we have 2 roads and we have a significant impact to those other abutters. It may not necessarily be the abutters on the roadway, but it might be the national forest, or there might be some additional abutters that we're not seeing on the plans here. So I think there is a cost associated with all of that, and certainly we need to think about the more roadways that we have, the more roadways that we have to maintain. And that would be a burden to the state as well as the town.
All right, I just thought
it's a good suggestion. I think those are some of the things that we do consider in our NEPA analyses, so that we understand what the impacts of new roadways and older roadways could be. But certainly one of the things that does need to be considered is the life cycle and the maintenance of all of these. So we do have to maintain our roadways generally every 10 years, and there's a cost, and now we're doubling it if we have two roadways.
But will that still be, if you were to do something like that, would this road now be considered a town road instead of a state road?
And then it would be a town burden at that time.
Okay.
And then you'd have outdated infrastructure and an older road. It's a scenario that we certainly could estimate. I think you'd find that it would be a lot more costly.
All right.
Jason, just for a comparable, I worked on the Dummer project to the north that realigned, reconstructed and realigned about 1.3 miles. About half of that was offline, so a brand new road. That project ran about 10 million. So I forget how long section 2 is, but I mean about $500,000 of on alignment road and $500,000 of off alignment was 10 million. So you're looking at 2 to 4 times that probably.
Yes.
So yeah.
So now we're looking. And we have 20. We secured 20 to rebuild an existing roadway, and we've got 3.2 miles within this segment. So all great considerations. Bypass has significant impact off that we don't know what the environmental resources would look like at that time, but then we do need to consider, how are we going to maintain that additional roadway? Who's going to do it? Who's going to pay for it? And then all of the impact. At some point, we're going to tie in to the existing roadway. Do you do it in Conway? Do you do it on 112? Where do you do it? And somebody's going to be impacted.
So someone's got to look at it. Because they did it at 101, they did it at 11 over, Franconia, Franklin, over 11 over there.
Yeah, we're in a different time now. We do not have the funds.
Wasn't too
within the
many years
10-year
ago,
plan.
because I did both the roads, so not that old.
It is a different time. We are fiscally constrained within the 10-year plan. We certainly are looking at stretching our dollars. Most of our program is maintenance and preservation. We don't have too much new construction, honestly, within the plan. Great. Any other thoughts or questions? Corey has a couple things. Do you want to run through?
I have slides. I don't know if anyone is necessarily in the mood to listen to another slideshow, even if it is brief. But I did just want to, I know rumble strips were tossed out there kind of casually. We do have our, I'll pull it up at least to see the limits of it. We do have our Ossipee to Milan project, which is strictly to install rumble strips along 16. The project limits go from, as you would suspect, from Milan down to Ossipee, which obviously includes this entire stretch of Albany. So that is proposed to be just centerline rumble strips. The shoulders are not wide enough in their current condition right now to accept that. We need at least 6 feet to do so. So the current plan is to rumble the entire limits of this project that we're talking about now, in addition to sections 1, in addition to sections 3, in addition to all these other segments outside of Albany. And this will happen, this is advertising in March, so this will be sometime over the summer/fall of this coming year, 2025. I mean, really quick, I'll just go through a really quick spiel here. I usually ask some self-reflection at this part. If anyone has ever crossed a line just a tire width, you're not even in your whole car, you're not finding yourself in the other lane, you've just looked in the back seat real quick and all of a sudden, oh, hey, I'm in the shoulder a little bit. And you recorrect. You look at a text message real quick, you recorrect. It doesn't take much. Some of the potential results of a centerline and an edgeline crossover, most of these are the same, obviously. Centerline, you can hit another vehicle. Don't do that. Just annual statistics real quick of lane departure deaths. 44,000 people leave the roadway or cross the center line and die every year. New Hampshire had 130 last year. Fatalities in general, all crashes. Center line or reset. I apologize. I'm trying to go on like 2 times speed, it's not working. Fatalities across the United States, 44,000, 130 of those happen in New Hampshire. Fatalities due to lane departures, about half of those nationwide. In New Hampshire, 39% of those. So you're looking at 51 people died in New Hampshire from either crossing the center line or crossing the shoulder, whether they hit another car, whether they hit a tree, whether they landed in a ditch, whatever happened, 51 people died because they left the road in some manner. Something to note about run-off-the-road crashes. The locations are completely random. We cannot tell you that somebody tomorrow is going to crash on the curve right down the road and die. It can happen literally anywhere, for any reason, so it's very hard to isolate locations where rumble strips are most effective, but they are predictable. So we can follow trends, we can follow geometries of road, we can follow speeds, we can follow traffic patterns, all this information to say a road like New Hampshire 16 fits the bill. It has a lot of those characteristics. Lane departures are more likely on New Hampshire 16. I'm not going to say they will happen. I'm not saying if we don't install rumble strips that somebody will die even in the next 10 years. But they're predictable. New Hampshire 16, just due to all the characteristics of it, someone running off the road, one way or the other, is likely. We did a very quick, and this is New Hampshire 16 in its entirety in New Hampshire. I wanted to have something more specific to Albany, or at least the project limits. We ran out of time. But this is all the fatalities we have in record of New Hampshire 16 over the last 10 years of people running off the road. This is just lane departures. That includes both center line and shoulder. 31 people have died over the last 10 years leaving New Hampshire 16. I'm sure most people are familiar with rumble strips. There's some in Madison, from the Madison-Albany town line and to the Madison-Conway town line, or I guess the other side of Albany. Why are we putting rumble strips in here? Those numbers right there are the, I'll say scientific proven. Those are the documented reduction in crashes that engineers and planners and such have compared before installation crash rates to after installation crash rates. Those are the general percentages that our crashes get reduced by. You're looking at 44 to 64% reduction in people crossing the center line and getting hit by somebody else. If you have a center line rumble strip, I realize that second one is a very big range, 13 to 51% reduction for shoulder rumbles, for single vehicle departures, which typically go on the shoulder side. That can also be center line, and they just happen to not have somebody in the other lane. These are very low cost. We just installed several miles on Route 2. It was 150 grand. Very, it was like a third of what we estimated it to be. And short construction exposure. They were done in 3 days. I mean, it's very, very quick. What happens? Where can we put in rumble strips? At least 40 miles an hour, even with that statute that takes effect July 1st. January 1st, the speed limit would still be 45 out here. I would highly advocate, if you want those speed limits to change from 50 to 45, to reach out to your selectmen, your officials, and get the ball rolling. The DOT is not looking to proactively change signs out. It's a huge effort. Not all roads are necessarily an issue that are posted 50 that can qualify for 45, so reach out. Pavement has to be in good condition. Fortunately, we have a lot of 16 that has been done recently, is in very good condition. Center line has to be at least 28 feet, which would qualify. Shoulder has to be at least 6. I think we've made it clear that that is not the case at all. Thinking rumble strips. These might be the typical rumble strips you think of. These are the ones that are on the interstate. They're essentially a little grooved out semicircle portion and a flat spot between them, and it makes a lot of noise. These are the rumble strips we're going to be installing. These are sinusoidal rumble strips, aka mumble strips. These are a sinusoidal wave, for anyone that remembers high school math. These are significantly less noisy. I don't know if you can see in the back, there's a little red underline that showed up there. They produce less exterior noise. The person in the vehicle will hear essentially the same noise. It's about the same noise level inside the vehicle. You'll still feel them just as effectively as the other one. Anyone outside the vehicle, it's significantly less loud. Decibel level. For anyone not familiar with decibel levels, they are measured kind of strangely. They change from 1 to 3 decibels. You're not going to notice much at all with the typical hearing. Change of 5, you'll probably pick up, you'll turn your head and go, hey, I heard something. Change of 10 is essentially doubling or halving the sound depending on which way you're going on the ladder. With that, and I know that's kind of small for this too, we have several, actually I have arrows here. This green arrow, this one says road noise from 65 miles an hour highway, so you're looking at 65 mile highway speed at a distance of 200 feet. So that's 68 decibels. Right above that, passenger vehicle strike on sinusoidal rumbles going at 60, and that's much closer than 200 feet. Right above it, passenger vehicle strike on rumble strips at 55 miles an hour. So you notice conventional rumble strips at a slower speed are actually louder than sinusoidals at 60. For comparison, Jake brake of a truck, 105 up at that purple arrow. Motorcycle, 116 up at that black arrow, which I would suspect probably frequent New Hampshire 16 quite frequently, and would be a much louder, I'm going to call them a nuisance noise, than I would anticipate rumble strips. What's noteworthy is that jump from that reddish orange arrow down to that yellow one is almost 10. That's about half the sound I just mentioned before. Effectiveness in New Hampshire, conveniently enough, excuse me, this is on New Hampshire 16, this is in Wakefield. I'm going to kind of explain this quickly because I know small numbers and it's hard to read from back there. Those blue lines are the average annual daily traffic per million vehicle miles. So you'll notice it's trending up. There's more traffic on 16 from 2002 to 2019. Those little orange bars on the bottom are the crash rates that we had. There's a green section right here in the middle. 2011, that's when rumble strips got installed through that portion of, where am I? Of Wakefield, sorry. If I remove those blue bars, knowing that traffic went up after rumbles got installed, crash rate went down. We're looking at half the crashes with almost double the vehicles. I mean, you can't tell me we went from a crash rate of 5.8 to 3.2 after rumbles went in and traffic went up. So, I had mentioned this a little bit up front, advertising in March, construction in spring, completion in fall. It's going to be a big window when they could do it. I'm not the controller of that, but when they do come out, it would be very quick. And then something that we're keeping an eye on is to see how rumble strips impact speeds, essentially. We have several projects. Our rumble strip program took a hiatus for about 7 years for complicated reasons. We have recently done portions of 106 and portions of Route 2, namely Randolph and Shelburne. So we are going to monitor to see how speeds get impacted with the rumble strips now installed, as well as the crash rates, obviously, but I'm interested in both of those factors. This is my contact for anyone interested. I have business cards if anyone wants it, but that was the high level. No, if you're at a bike, this openings, so we got that too. And actually, I have the TomTom data, in case anyone's interested in that too. Speeds actually weren't crazy. This is only the past year. I don't know what speed data we've looked at previously. I don't want to question that. I'm sure it's totally viable. I did notice most of the speed actually is 50 to 55, which again, from what I'm hearing is too high, and I agree. But even through some of those curves, there's a couple orange sections it does lower to just under 50. And to answer the cost of a life, $15 million.
Was that orange was less speed or higher?
So orange is a little bit lower. I have the scale down on the bottom. So yellow is 50 to 55. Orange is 45 to 50. Is that color orange?
Is that when they're going around the blind corners and they can't see?
Probably.
Okay.
Those familiar with the area would slow down, yes. So that's my spiel in a nutshell.
Yeah, actually, it's a great graphic if you can go back real quick. And I think this speaks to the desire for lower speeds. You're seeing people naturally, because of the curves, slow down as you approach Iona Lake. So I think that is the challenge for the DOT engineers on the Albany-Madison 29597 is how do we, help and I guess make it even better, right? Like how can we use that to our advantage to further lower speeds? And a couple things, Kelly Rota has advocated for the 45-mile-an-hour speed zone that goes in effect. I don't know where that stands. I should have followed up on that, but I know that our Bureau of Traffic, or state traffic engineer, is aware of it. As Kelly's been helped by Senator-elect McConkey in order to promote that. So I would expect that would change before our project begins. And then I forgot what else I was going to say, but I think this is something that we're keenly aware of. We've heard it. We'll work on in the future to bring other first responders to it to sort of help advocate it and see what we can do.
So something notable about this, it's not present on the chart, but the 85th percentile, which is the speed that our speed limit is typically based on, if we were to do a speed study out on 16, the 85th percentile, meaning 85% of the vehicles are going at least that speed. Is really closer to 57, 58, it goes to that. Is that a laser pointer? Particularly right around here, which I believe is around Nickerson. That was the highest segment I saw. Having that 45-mile-an-hour speed limit sign in the toolbox, the Bureau of Traffic under its previous administrator has been very adamant that changing the number on the sign does not change the speed. I'd be very curious if changing the number on the sign here influences the speed without enforcement, which sounds like there's a lack of, not to the enforcement's detriment. I mean, everyone's short-staffed and there's a lot going on. But I'd be curious be following that to see how that reacts. The other thing I wanted to mention, I think the gentleman has left, that was talking about the passing zone. This is the time to take care of that, because we are going to be restriping the center line through the majority of this portion as part of our rules. So if we want to address passing zones, we can restripe them as part of this project. So we'll be looking at them as part of the project, but just wanted to specifically call that out. First come, first served of the month.
Corey, can you just give us a sense of when you're talking about this happening, this particular project?
This project?
Yeah.
So this advertises in March this coming year, so
it's really
three months from now.
Yeah.
And then typically the process is about 3 weeks of advertising for the contractors to get their bids in. We pick the low bid. It goes through Governor Council, which is worst case 3 months. So what are we up to? July, August probably. So physical installation would probably be somewhere between August and October. Best case.
And
Go ahead, Albert.
And could you be a little more specific? Is this, we're talking about continuous stripe, continuous, the entire length of Route 16 from Ospey to Mylan, with the exception of deteriorated pavement sections?
There are several sections, and I'd go back to the map, it's right here to see. There are several sections where either the pavement condition is just not accepting of rumbles. If we do it, it'll just start unraveling and we'll have a problem. Or the pavement width isn't adequate, which doesn't happen too often, or the speed is under 40. I think there's a section in Berlin that is an urban compact, so that's Berlin's responsibility. We're not touching that because that's Berlin's thing. Otherwise, we would have the appropriate breaks and the rumbles for side streets, major traffic generators like that. But throughout the limits of the project where we're proposing it, yes. If that helps.
Hi.
Come on.
It's Laura from Tanglewood. Two things. $150,000 for the rumble strips. That's really, really good. How often do you have to do it without plowing through our winters? Every year, every other year, every 2 years? Yeah.
Oh, just once.
Just once, and the plows don't ruin it at all, so
No.
that's it?
And the nice part about the site new soils, actually, I'll try to go back to this.
And I'm talking the center line.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can see that level on it.
Mhm.
It's a lot hard to tell because the level is actually on the line itself. That entire line is at minimum slightly recessed and at maximum a quarter inch. So that whole line is actually below the pavement. So that won't be caught by plows or anything. The pavement markings should actually have a longer lifespan because it's much harder to drive on them because they're recessed a little bit.
Okay.
So that should increase their visibility for longer. But no, this would be, there's a slight caveat with your question only because through Albany we have this project coming. So when the project comes, they would redo them. But the rumbles themselves would just get redone as the paving cycle comes through. So if they come through to redo the road, they would replace the rumbles afterwards.
The other thing is you show the thing, and I know it's a safety thing, and the safety people on here, and, speed is number one for us.
Yeah.
We appreciate everything else.
Yeah.
But you said that the average is 50 miles an hour. I mean, how did you come up with that? Because I live on Route 16, and they go by my house at 65, 70 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're saying the average is like 50? How did you come up with that 50?
So this is through a subscription service we have with TomTom. So what they grab is phones, basically. I can't tell you what apps they use, who they buy the information from. I know it does not grab the entire population of drivers on every road, but we have compared it with actual traffic studies that our Bureau of Traffic has done. There's some enforcement. And they have pretty good confidence that these are very close to what we would actually measure.
Do they do it in certain time frames, or is it a 24-hour survey?
This is constant. This particular one is from the beginning of last December to the end of November this year. So this is for a whole year. If you wanted to know what they are from 8 p.m. to midnight, I
could give you that.
I have a radar gun, I'm gonna start using. So I'm getting ready for safety. But no, okay, thank you.
But yeah, I mean, that's an average. I have no doubt there are vehicles doing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to formally request a similar presentation from the Department of Safety about the cost effectiveness of reducing the speed. Because I think we all intuitively think that it is going to have a low cost, high impact. It would be great to have a presentation on that. So could we please, would you reach out to your counterpart at Department of Safety and have that happen? Thank you.
Councilor Kenny, did you have a comment? Got to enforce. With enforcement. Of course.
That's the challenge.
We want enforcement, we want engineering, and we want speed reduction. I think I do, and I think I've heard that from.
This is our Main Street. What Main Street is 50 miles an hour in this county? It's already 9.
And if you haven't noticed, and for those of you, it looks like there's a lot of gray here in the room, the people who have lived here for a while, enforcement isn't improving. You go up into North Conway, watch the cars blast through the red lights, people blowing through stop signs, and really not paying attention to speed limits. But how do you do that? Again, I mean, this is a bureaucracy, and these are people trying to get something done, but it takes time. I know the state police, you know, are starving for money. The town police departments, it just depends on the town. But you're right, enforcement is a problem, and somehow that needs to be improved. And that could improve it right out the way it is even. Just having a cop, you know, consistently out there, and people knowing they're there, it could make a big difference. My name is Brad McKenzie, I live in Madison. I used to live up in Wildwood for about 20 years, I guess. Years back, and got to experience the challenges of being on Route 16 and just hearing the sirens going up and down. I mean, all weekend, literally. And along with that, getting to know or knowing people that lost their lives out here. Our neighbors, our friends, our children of our friends. And I just hope that you folks will be sympathetic to that. I know it's a project and a long project, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you're doing this. This is like deja vu to me. I stood up here 10 years ago with Jack Rose trying to convince the DOT that we needed rumble strips. And it was like, well, gee, sorry, you know, and that was it. And like, here we are. Same thing happened next year. I've been around here for 40-something years now. And this has been a consistent problem, and it still is, and you got to understand how frustrating that is. When I heard Mr. Hatch talk about living on the highway, and you know, you got to think, how does this guy feel? You know, severe accidents with people getting killed, and our neighbors having to go out to these accidents and treat people, pull them out of cars, and the state police. It's really just, it shouldn't be. So I'm so happy to see you guys addressing this. I can't even tell you. I may not live long enough to see the results of it, but I think you're sincere. I feel that, and I've never felt it before. So maybe we'll have some good things happen, and I hope we do. But I hope that we understand your challenge too. You know, everything we do, it's got to go through the steps, and I get it. There's money. How do you get the money? It's complicated. But I hope you'll understand our perspective of it too. And so maybe together we can get along and get it done. So.
Absolutely. I appreciate the support, and just, you know, generally across the board, I appreciate the support for this project, because some communities that shall remain nameless are very anti-rumble strips, I guess.
I get that.
I can name them.
I'm sure we could speculate.
So, it kind of leads into my question, which is, so it's a different type of rumble strip. Because the rumble strips you put down in Alton several years ago, maybe 8 years ago. In Plymouth, okay? We had literally community public hearings to get rid of them.
Right.
And,
That's crazy.
And it was primarily because, you know, one rumble strip wouldn't pass a campground, and the campers were getting woken up at night because of the sound. But I think it was a deep type of rumble strip.
I think it was installed incorrectly as well.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of complaints being adjacent to the ground.
So one of the things I always encourage is, as it's been indicated here tonight, public notifications, believe it or not, public hearings on rumple strip activity.
Yeah.
Because that's something back then that we really drove home. And since there's been a moratorium on it, we need to reintroduce the idea of robust public hearings, because these rumple strips are going to go past hotels, restaurants, and so they have to know that it's not the old rumple strips, it's the mumble rumple strips, so that they can adapt to it and understand it. And not what, because, I got calls from Shelburne and Randolph, the same thing. And so, rumple strip activity gets around the state pretty quick. But I will say, the Department of Transportation, when Commissioner Murray was commissioner, and we had fatalities after fatalities in Milton, when I was a state senator, that those rumple strips of Route 16 through Milton and Rochester have overwhelmingly saved lives over the years. So they are important, but you just got to make sure that they're the right rumple strips.
Absolutely.
Does it matter to you that people aren't supposed to want to drive on rumble strips? I mean, they're uncomfortable to drive on. You try to avoid them. I think that helps the safety. People don't want to drive on. They know they're there. I'm going to stay over,
Right.
I would think that would make a difference. People aren't just going out for their jollies and driving on the rumble strips.
No, but if they're passing.
Well, yeah, sure, they're going to hit them occasionally. Oh, I hope. That's the idea.
Well, I'm with you. I'm not against you.
Yes, they do. That's what keeps you alert.
They're installed through the passing zones, if passing zones stay throughout the project. But that is good feedback.
Okay. Great. Well, we're approaching 8 o'clock, and I appreciate everybody's time. We've got some picking up to do, so we'll be around for a little bit, but certainly thank everybody for attending and their patience. If you do have some additional questions while we're picking up, feel free to ask. And you can grab our cards, Corey's, or anybody from the department if you are looking for some questions to be answered. Thank you very much.